Hi guys, Mary Beth Temple here, and I'm going to show you how to make your very own body double. Whether you knit or crochet or sew, it's awesome to have something that's your exact shape so that when you're making a garment, you can see how it's going to fit rather than having to try it on 17 times. So grab a pillow and some duct tape and a nice long t-shirt, and let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is wrap a little bit of saran wrap around my lovely model's neck. And it doesn't have a functional reason, but what you do not want to do is get duct tape residue all over your very gentle skin. Not too tight, of course, you don't want to choke anybody, but just enough to keep the duct tape off of the skin and tuck the extras under the collar. I want to make sure that there's no skin showing when I'm putting tape up here. I'll finesse that a little bit more when I start putting the tape on. The next thing I'm going to do, we want the t-shirt to be nice and long to cover the hip line so that you have access to that when you're sewing. But sometimes to get the length, the t-shirt's a little bigger than you need. So I don't want it to wrinkle underneath, mostly because it's uncomfortable for the poor person that's stuck inside the t-shirt. So now what I'm going to do is, using some short lengths of tape, I'm going to pull the t-shirt tight and tape it into place. Again, it doesn't matter if there's wrinkles in the t-shirt because you're never going to see it. But sometimes as the process goes on and more tape winds up going on, it can just be a little uncomfortable. So let's go ahead and solve that problem ahead of time. It doesn't matter that she can't get out of it because we're going to cut her out of it later. I'm going to put one more at the top. This will also help keep the saran wrap where it belongs. All right, let's turn around the front again. So this is a lot more fitted than it was, and it'll be easier to work on. So honest to goodness, all we're going to do now is put all the tape in the world. The point at this point is to get it as form-fitting as we can get it while the person inside can still breathe. Your temptation will be to make it too tight, because we all want to be more slender than we are. But if you make it so tight that you're uncomfortable breathing, it also means when you use it as a basis to make your garments might be a little too tight. You all have those outfits that you own that look nice when you're standing up, not so hot when you're sitting down or breathing or going out for a sandwich or whatever. You want your clothes to fit in a way that they're comfortable. So I'm starting with a cross up here just to get that shoulder coverage. I'm not going to do the upper arms because A, that would be really difficult to get out of, and B, that's not something we always need when we're tailoring. So I'm starting with the X's for no other reason than that it's easy to do and it's easy to make the item more form-fitting. And at this point in the process, it really doesn't matter how long the strips are. We're going to finish the whole thing off at the end by going round and round and smoothing everything over. Once I've got those crisscrosses done at the top of the chest, I'm going to start working on the back. I'm working top down, essentially. Again, there is more art than science to this, but I can go straight across the back because for most ladies, the back is not as curvy as the front. So once again, I'm just making some straighter strips, and I'm going to go across the back, side to side. I also want to say that you want to make sure that one strand of tape overlaps the next. What we do not want to see is white t-shirt. It's one of the reasons we use the blue tape. It's fun to use the blue tape because it's prettier, but also it helps us with the contrast. We can see if there's too much t-shirt showing anywhere. It's okay if it goes a little too far on the sides. We can cut that up and clean that up. when we are taking the model out of the dress form. When you get under the arm, this is a good time for your model to raise her arms. I'm going to put wider strips now and let some of them sort of overlap onto the front. It's going to happen as we get these little short strips on at the beginning that we want lots of overlap. So see, her arms are up. I can bring it around to the front. When I go around to the front and put the front tape on, I will overlap on the back. Short pieces don't matter at this point. When we get a more form-fitting project going on here, what we'll do is put some very long strips on to make it a little more neat. When I'm taping both the back and the front, I need to go maybe 3 to 5 inches under the hip line, but that's as far down as I need to go. It'll be great to have some t-shirt hanging out at the bottom when we're cutting later. It will help us to have it as a guide. Now I'm going to go back to the front. So now that I have my crisscrosses in the front, I'm going to work side to side across the front in the same way that I did the back. Okay, I've gotten in short strips. I've gotten this fitted onto the model. Once again, form-fitting, but not so tight that nobody can breathe. The next thing I want to do, if I want to do it, it's up to you whether you do or not. I'm going to add just a little collar piece on here because I think it's easier when we're stuffing the dress dummy later. I'm also going to put some strips over the arm's eye so I can see where that is. It'll make it easier to trim it out later. And finally, we're going to do the mummy wrap. I'm going to go round and round and round and round and round from the bottom to the top as far as I can go to keep the bottom half of the dummy smooth. So make sure that it goes on the saran wrap and not on skin, because boy does that hurt when it gets the small hairs on the back of your neck. Okay, so we have our little stand-up area there. Then I want some strips over the shoulder to give us a clean cut line for later. So now we're doing good here. So now I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm going to unroll as I go. I'm going to go round and round and round and round. And the reason I'm going to do that is I don't want these little short edges peeling up. But of course I don't want to start with long strips because it's too difficult to maneuver. All right, here we go. Once I get up to where the underarm is, I can't go around in circles anymore because once again, I don't want to taper arms down. So when you get as far up as you can go, you're going to end it off with some tape. And then just before you cut, go over one more time. Just look very carefully. Make sure there's nothing hanging out, there's nothing loose, and there's no ends. Let's cut her out of the darn thing. So we're going to turn around. Now remember how I said it was important to have a little t-shirt hanging out at the bottom for a guide? This is where it gets interesting because I want to cut straight up the back. I also don't want to cut the tank top that she's wearing underneath. So use the t-shirt as a guide. After we stuff this, we're going to tape that seam up. So if it's a little crooked, it is not the end of the world. But get your fingers way up there to make sure that all you are cutting is t-shirt and duct tape. And this is a situation where you want a really sharp pair of scissors. All right, so here is her top. I'm going to pull that down to get it a little closer to her body and give me a little more slack. All right, one more sec. Okay, so we have it slit all the way up the back, and now she should be able to walk right out of it because the saran wrap will keep it from sticking to her body. So here is our dress form. The next thing we need to do is stuff it. So essentially what we have here is a duct tape suit. So now I want to stuff it, and I want that stuffing to be tight. I want to get as much stuffing in there as I can so it fills out the curves of the model's body. So the first thing I'm going to do is get some loose fiber fill and put it in the bust area, because at least for most of us, that's where the duct tape is going to curve out. So I'm going to really just make sure I have some extra stuffing in there. The next thing I'm going to do for the bulk of the stuffing is just use a polyester pillow. It's a lot easier to work with than the loose fiber fill, and it will take up the bulk of the space. So I'm going to shove it on in there. But I wanted to get that loose fiber fill down first to make sure that I had extra stuffing there when I needed it. One last thing before I tape it up, I'm going to take the sleeves and tuck them towards the inside. You can fasten that with tape, or a rubber band would work to rubber band it on in there. But I want to have the t-shirt sleeves tucked into the inside because I do not want the stuffing to leak out. So I'm going to just use some tape because that's what I have handy. And I'm going to tape both sleeves down. All right. I like to work from the center out in both directions so that I make sure the waist is exactly where I want it to be. And also if I need to get in there and fiddle with the bust line to make sure that the fiber fill is in there in the right spot, it'll be easier to get my hands in if there's no tape up there. So I'm going to start in the center and work my way down and up. Short strips to keep it manageable. And you can see where it lines up, you can see the tape line from your original taping. So make sure that you don't have it on an angle. You want to make sure it lines up exactly the way it did when you were putting the tape on. Okay, and this pillow is fitting fine down here at the hip line. But I want to make sure that I have enough stuffing in the bust and it doesn't look like I do. So I'm going to put some more in by reaching in through the neck. Really stuff it tight. You want to push it out to the outer extent of where the duct tape is. But because duct tape is not flexible, you don't have to worry that you're putting so much stuffing in that you've ruined the shape that you got. It will only go as far as it did when you taped it. So now we have some bust action going on here. I'm going to just stick one more handful for good luck. Make sure you have enough stuffing up by the shoulders so the shoulders do not collapse. This takes a lot of fiber fill. Okay, so now that I feel that the bust line is stuffed enough and I have some extra up by the shoulders, I'm going to flip it back. Again, put some real pressure on it, line up the two sides, and tape it. All right, working up towards the neck, I'm going to keep going. Again, lining up my sides, making sure they're right next to each other. And then going to go to the very top. Now I've lost just a little bit of tape pulled out here. So I'm going to cover that up. Once again, if you see white, you know that there's some t-shirt showing, and that's not what you need. I'm going to now tape the top closed because I don't want the stuffing to leak out. So without pulling it flat, you want it to stand up a little to show where the natural neckline is. Just tape across the stuffing. So this is an arena in which you're not pulling. All you're doing here is trying to keep the shape that you had, but make sure that the stuffing doesn't leak out. Flip that over, do the back. Again, not too much pressure. You don't want to collapse the neck. Okay, and to finish off the neck, I'm going to do one piece all the way around that stands up. Okay, we got my overlap right there. Then I can fold it in. All right, but there's my neck. It didn't collapse in. My t-shirt is holding in the sides. I'm just going to put one little strip around the edge to give me a neat edge on the outside. Make sure there's nothing loose hanging out. All right, and then I'm going to flip it over. Make sure there's nothing wonky hanging out on the back. But we covered that pretty well with the back strips. Lastly, I'm going to have to stuff up the bottom. So once again, push that pillow up there. Make sure it's stuffed as tight as it can be. And then use your t-shirt to hold it in. Tip one side forward, the other side back. So I tucked the back under the pillow, and then I brought the front under the pillow, and I'm going to hold that down with tape. First with short strips to make sure it's where I want it, and then I'll cover it with a long strip to make sure we don't have a million ends hanging out. All right, so now I can see that that's good and secure. Everything is filled out the way I want it to be filled out. The very last step, I'm just going to cover up all the t-shirt on the bottom. Now I'm going to leave an opening in the center. If you have a mannequin stand and you want to use this dress dummy on there, you could just put it in through the t-shirt on the bottom and get it on the stand. So there you have it, your very own body double that you can use to try your clothes, whether knitted or crocheted or sewn or whatever. You can try that on there and see exactly if you have the fit you want for the garment you're trying to make. Once again, I would try and get a stand to put this on. Alternatively, before you close up the bottom, maybe weight the bottom with a couple of bags of beans or some curtain weights or something like that so it stands up. Anyway, thanks so much for joining us. I look forward to seeing you again soon.